On a crisp Monday morning in September, a young mother performed one of the most ordinary acts of love, dropping her 6-year-old son off at school in Chicago's South Loop. She leaned in, kissed him gently, whispered words of encouragement, and watched him walk toward the building with the bright energy only a child heading into his day can carry. That moment, captured in time just after 9 o'clock, would become the final memory many hold of Romeka Meeks Blackman. 6 minutes later, she lay on the pavement, her life stolen in a burst of gunfire that shattered far more than one family. Romeka, 31 years old, was a devoted mother balancing 2 jobs while studying to become a registered nurse. Those who knew her described a woman full of drive and quiet strength, someone who poured herself into raising her son with handwritten lunchbox notes reminding him how smart, cool, and loved he was. She had recently posted one such note online, a simple affirmation for her boy on the start of another school week. Her world revolved around him and the future she was building step by step. Sharing the same father for their children was Carlos Smith, who was present that morning near Turmac Road and State Street. The other woman in this tangled co-parenting dynamic was Quadajah Holly Johnson, also 31, who had driven to the area with Smith and their infant child. What began as a verbal exchange between the two mothers escalated rapidly. Witnesses recalled raised voices, arms crossed in confrontation, and Smith attempting to intervene physically. Reports later detailed a chokehold and a slammed car door. In the chaos, Johnson retrieved a legally owned 9mm handgun from her vehicle. She fired once, paused, then fired twice more. Romeka, unarmed, collapsed where she stood, just steps from the school where children were beginning their day. The horror unfolded in broad daylight, in a place meant for safety and new beginnings. For Romeka's little boy, the day that started with his mother's kiss ended with a world forever altered. He would turn 7 days later, stepping into childhood marked by an absence no explanation could soften. For Johnson, who was pregnant at the time of the incident, the consequences were immediate yet delayed in their full weight. She remained at the scene, and according to prosecutors, shared a fist bump with Smith afterward, a detail that would later fuel intense debate over intent and self-defense. In the months that followed, the case moved slowly through the system. Initial reviews left questions unanswered, with authorities citing insufficient information at first for charges. Family members waited in anguish, wearing pink in honor of Romeka, and pleading publicly for answers and accountability. By late 2025 and into early 2026, Johnson faced first-degree murder charges. Court proceedings grew tense, requiring larger rooms to accommodate grieving relatives. She remained in custody, her own pregnancy advancing behind bars, while the boy she left motherless continued asking where his mom had gone. This tragedy exposed the raw fragility of lives intersecting through complicated relationships. 2 mothers, shared children, and a moment of rage that erased one future entirely. The South Loop, usually alive with morning routines, carried the echo of those shots long after the scene was cleared. What should have been an unremarkable school drop-off became a haunting marker of how quickly ordinary days can turn devastating, leaving a child to grow up navigating clouds in search of rainbows, supported by a determined village of family who vowed to shield him as best they could. The path to justice had only begun, but the human cost was already painfully clear. Court records and official reports painted a stark picture of the final moments and the legal battle that followed. Romeka Meeks Blackman was rushed to Stroger Hospital after sustaining 3 gunshot wounds, 1 to the face and 2 to the chest. She succumbed to her injuries shortly afterward. Her death ruled a homicide by multiple perforating gunshot wounds. The autopsy confirmed she had been unarmed at the time of the confrontation, with no defensive wounds suggesting she had initiated lethal force. Police recovered 3 9mm shell casings at the scene near Turmac Road and State Street. The handgun, legally owned and carried by Quadajah Johnson, was recovered, and ballistics matched the fatal shots. Witnesses described the sequence clearly, a verbal argument that turned physical when Carlos Smith reportedly placed Romeka in a chokehold and slammed a car door. Johnson then walked to her vehicle, retrieved the weapon, and fired. Once, followed by a noticeable pause, then 2 additional rounds. Prosecutors emphasized that pause as evidence of intent rather than pure panic. Johnson was taken into custody immediately, but released pending further investigation. For 3 months, Romeka's family waited in agony as initial reviews cited insufficient information for immediate charges. In December 2025, authorities moved forward, arresting Johnson and charging her with first-degree murder. By January 2026, prosecutors stacked 5 additional counts, bringing the total weight of the indictment to reflect the calculated nature of the act. She remained held without bond, even as her pregnancy advanced. In court, Johnson's defense team argued self-defense, pointing to a history of protective orders she had filed against Romeka dating back to late 2024. They claimed an ongoing feud and portrayed their client as protecting herself and her infant child, who was in the back seat during the incident. However, the orders were never served, and prosecutors challenged their relevance. A pivotal piece of evidence emerged in filings. After the shots, Johnson allegedly approached Smith and exchanged a celebratory fist bump while Romeka lay dying. The judge noted during hearings that such a gesture undermined any claim of fearful reaction, stating clearly that celebrating after firing on someone does not align with self-defense under the law. Surveillance video, witness statements, and medical records from the hospital were central to the state's case. The Cook County State's Attorney's Office committed to pursuing justice, working closely with Chicago police on ballistics, timelines, and eyewitness accounts. Defense motions attempted to question witness reliability, including one individual wearing noise-canceling headphones. Yet the core facts held: Romeka had just dropped her son at school and was not the aggressor brandishing a weapon. As of early 2026, Johnson faced the full force of first-degree murder charges while pregnant and in custody. Her requests for bond or home monitoring were denied, leaving her to confront the reality of potential life in prison and the birth of her child under guarded conditions. The legal proceedings highlighted deep inconsistencies in the self-defense narrative, particularly the post-shooting behavior and the physical evidence showing Romeka posed no armed threat. For Romeka's family, these court documents offered a measure of validation after months of uncertainty, though nothing could restore the vibrant young mother who had simply wanted to see her son thrive. The case moved deliberately through the system, underscoring how one brief, violent encounter could fracture multiple lives beyond repair. Media coverage quickly captured the raw heartbreak of a school morning turned fatal in Chicago's South Loop. Local outlets reported how Romeka Meeks Blackman had just dropped her young son at school around 9 o'clock when a confrontation erupted with Quadajah Johnson near Kermack Road and State Street. Stations like Fox 32, ABC 7, and CBS Chicago detailed the domestic nature of the dispute, noting both women shared children with the same man and that the shooting followed a verbal argument that escalated physically. Reporters highlighted witness accounts of Johnson retrieving a legally owned handgun from her car and firing 3 times, with a distinct pause between the first and subsequent shots. The image of Romeka collapsing unarmed on the pavement, just moments after kissing her child goodbye, resonated deeply across the city. Coverage emphasized the handwritten lunchbox note Romeka had placed for her son that morning, a tender message of love and encouragement that her family later shared publicly as a final act of maternal devotion. Public reaction poured in through television segments and online discussions, with many expressing outrage over the delay in charges. Nearly 3 months passed before Johnson's arrest in December 2025. Families and community members gathered at hearings wearing pink in Romeka's honor, filling courtrooms and forcing judges to relocate proceedings for safety and space. News stories captured grieving relatives pleading for justice, describing Romeka as the energetic leader of her family despite being the youngest, a hard-working mother pursuing nursing studies while raising her boy. Key revelations focused on the post-shooting behavior. Prosecutors alleged Johnson fist-bumped the children's father while Romeka lay dying, a detail repeated in reports that fueled debates about intent and self-defense. Outlets also noted Johnson's prior protective orders against Romeka, which her defense cited as evidence of ongoing tension, though many were unserved. Interviews with family revealed missed opportunities for intervention and the terror of waiting for accountability. Timeline coverage traced the slow wheels of justice in Chicago, from the initial scene where Johnson remained present, through early statements citing insufficient evidence for immediate charges, to the eventual stacking of first-degree murder counts by early 2026. Reports portrayed the broader impact on two families torn apart, with Romeka's son turning 7 days after losing his mother, and Johnson facing custody while pregnant. The story spread beyond local news, sparking conversations about co-parenting conflicts, gun access, and the vulnerability of routine moments like school drop-offs. Media underscored Romeka's aspirations. She worked 2 jobs and dreamed of becoming a registered nurse, contrasting sharply with the sudden violence that ended her life. Community voices called for faster responses in such cases, while some coverage examined the challenges of blended families navigating shared custody amid unresolved resentments. As hearings progressed into 2026, news updates kept the public informed of Johnson's continued detention without bond and the emotional toll on all involved. The coverage served as a somber reminder of how quickly everyday tensions can erupt into irreversible tragedy, leaving a child without his mother and an entire family searching for peace amid profound loss. The South Loop incident lingered in headlines not only for its proximity to a school, but for the human stories it exposed in the search for answers and healing. Romeka's family poured out their grief in raw, public statements that captured the depth of their devastation. Her mother spoke through tears in court and to reporters, describing the agonizing 3 months of waiting for justice after her daughter's death. She called Romeka the baby of the family, yet its natural leader, the one who held everyone together. Holidays had lost their meaning, replaced by an emptiness that no verdict could fully erase. "I just want justice for my daughter," she said, her voice heavy with exhaustion and relief when the charges finally advanced. "It won't bring her back, but it will lift some of this weight off my heart." She expressed gratitude for the support surrounding her grandson, emphasizing that the boy had a strong village, grandmother, aunties, uncles, who would ensure he saw rainbows even through the darkest clouds. Other relatives echoed the pain of sudden absence. They recalled how Romeka balanced 2 jobs and night classes toward becoming a registered nurse, always making time to leave loving notes in her son's lunchbox. One family member shared the boy's response written on the back of that final note: "I love you more, Mom." The simple exchange became a symbol of the gentle bond shattered that September morning. Family insisted Romeka had been unarmed and posed no threat, questioning how the shooter could simply remain at the scene and later exchange a gesture with the children's father while their loved one bled on the pavement. They viewed the prior protective orders filed by Johnson as an attempt to build a false narrative, calling it a premeditated game rather than genuine fear. Carlos Smith, the father caught in the middle, spoke briefly in media interviews after court hearings. He expressed disbelief at some witness descriptions of the confrontation and said his own truth would eventually surface. He acknowledged the difficulty of the situation, noting the back-and-forth accusations, but stressing he could not say much while the case remained active. Reports indicated he had not seen his son with Romeka since the shooting, adding another layer of fractured family ties. Neighbors and witnesses offered fragmented yet consistent observations. Some described the argument escalating quickly, with Smith physically intervening between the 2 women. One witness pointed out the shooter to arriving officers, while another recalled the distinct pause between gunshots. Community members expressed shock that such violence could erupt so close to a school during morning drop-off, a time meant for innocent routines. Investigators and prosecutors highlighted missed red flags in the co-parenting arrangement. A history of tension, unserved protective orders, and warnings about volatility went unheeded until it was too late. The family believed those earlier legal filings were strategic rather than protective, part of a pattern that culminated in the deadly encounter. They pleaded for the system to listen sooner in similar domestic situations, noting how Romeka had simply been trying to navigate shared responsibilities without conflict. Throughout the hearings, supporters filled the gallery in pink shirts, a visual testament to Romeka's vibrant spirit and the collective mourning of those who loved her. Their presence forced logistical changes in the courtroom, underscoring the emotional weight carried by everyone involved. The boy's extended family vowed to shield him as best they could, pulling him through low moments together and reminding him that his mother's love remained in his heart. Their words revealed both profound sorrow and fierce determination to honor Romeka by ensuring her son would thrive despite the irreplaceable loss. These personal voices brought humanity to the tragedy, reminding listeners that behind every court filing and news headline stood real people forever changed by 90 seconds of unchecked rage. As the legal process advanced into 2026, Quadajah Johnson faced the full weight of 5 counts of first-degree murder in Cook County Court. The slow machinery of justice in Chicago, often criticized for its delays, finally delivered formal charges after months of investigation and family pressure. Johnson remained held without bond, her pregnancy progressing behind bars as she prepared to give birth under guarded conditions, knowing the newborn would likely be placed with relatives or the state while she confronted decades, or possibly life, behind prison walls. For Romeka Meeks Blackman's family, the advancing case brought a fragile measure of closure. The verdict delivered a sense of lifted burden after 3 months of terror and uncertainty, though they openly acknowledged that no sentence could restore their daughter, sister, or the energetic young mother who had led her family with quiet strength. Her son, now 7, continued asking for his mommy, relying on a tight-knit village of grandparents, aunts, and uncles to guide him through the days. They promised to help him find rainbows in every cloud, surrounding him with the love his mother had poured into handwritten notes and daily routines. Carlos Smith, the shared father, navigated his own complicated grief and distance, with limited contact reported with the boy since the tragedy. The incident left lasting scars on 2 families and the broader South Loop community. What began as a routine school drop-off exposed the dangers simmering in entangled co-parenting relationships, where unresolved tensions and easy access to firearms turned words into irreversible violence. Romeka's aspirations to complete her nursing studies and build a stable future for her child were extinguished in moments, serving as a somber reminder of potential cut short. Johnson's own children, including the infant present that morning and the one yet to be born, would grow up carrying the consequences of their mother's actions, navigating life amid the shadow of loss and incarceration. The case highlighted systemic challenges in Chicago, the painstaking pace of charging decisions in domestic-related shootings, the emotional toll on witnesses and families forced to relive trauma in packed courtrooms, and the difficulty of intervening before volatility erupts near innocent bystanders like schoolchildren. Pink shirts worn by supporters at every hearing became a symbol of collective mourning and a call for swifter accountability in similar situations. While justice moved forward with stacked charges and strong evidentiary presentations, including ballistics, timelines, and witness statements, the deeper wounds remained. A little boy forever missing his mother's kiss at the school curb, a family torn apart, and questions lingering about how many lives one brief confrontation can destroy. In the end, the South Loop shooting of September 8, 2024, stands as a painful chapter in the city's ongoing struggle with interpersonal violence. Romeka will never see her son's milestones or watch him grow into the superstar she believed him to be. Johnson faces the reality of prolonged separation from her children and the heavy label that comes with taking another mother's life. The village surrounding Romeka's son continues its quiet work of healing, proving that love and resilience can persist even when justice arrives too late to prevent the initial heartbreak. This tragedy underscores how fragile everyday moments can be, and how the ripples of a single act of rage extend far beyond the pavement where it occurred, touching generations yet to come. This case ultimately reveals the devastating speed with which unresolved resentments in shared parenting can explode into irreversible loss. What began as an ordinary school drop-off on a crisp September morning ended with a devoted young mother lying on the pavement, her final loving note to her son left unread in his lunchbox. Romeka Meeks Blackman's death was not the result of some random street violence, but a culmination of tensions between 2 women bound by the same man and their children. The pause between gunshots, the celebratory gesture afterward, and the history of protective orders that never fully resolved the underlying conflict all point to choices made in heated moments that no courtroom can undo. Several red flags stand out in hindsight. Co-parenting arrangements involving multiple mothers and one father often carry emotional landmines, yet society frequently underestimates how quickly verbal disputes can turn physical when firearms are readily accessible. The unserved orders of protection, The physical intervention by the shared father and the failure to de-escalate before reaching for a weapon illustrate how small decisions accumulate into tragedy. Witnesses and family described a situation that felt like a ticking time bomb, yet intervention came too late for Romeka, who was simply trying to navigate her responsibilities that morning. From a broader perspective, the case exposes vulnerabilities in how the justice system handles domestic-tinged confrontations near sensitive locations like schools. The initial delay in charging, 3 months of agony for Romeka's family, highlights bureaucratic hurdles that can compound grief, even when evidence like ballistics, timelines, and eyewitness accounts eventually supported strong first-degree murder counts. At the same time, the denial of bond for a pregnant defendant raises difficult questions about balancing public safety, due process, and the welfare of unborn children caught in the consequences of parental actions. Two families now carry burdens that will echo for generations. One mourning a vibrant woman whose nursing dreams and maternal love were cut short. The other facing separation and stigma. What this tragedy reveals about human nature is both sobering and universal. In moments of perceived threat or jealousy, the instinct to protect can override reason, leading to choices that destroy not only the intended target, but the shooter's own future and her children's stability. Romeka's family showed remarkable resilience, vowing to surround her son with love and help him find light amid darkness. Their determination reminds us that healing often rests not solely on verdicts, but on communities choosing empathy and support over further division. Ultimately, this story urges greater attention to de-escalation resources for complex family dynamics, stricter awareness around firearms in volatile relationships, and faster, more transparent responses from authorities when warnings surface. No sentence can return a mother's kiss at the school curb or erase a child's daily questions about her absence. Yet by examining the sequence of events with clarity and compassion, we honor Romeka's memory and perhaps prevent another ordinary morning from becoming a community's lasting scar. The pursuit of justice continues, but so must the quieter work of fostering accountability and care before rage claims another life.